On the third weekend of April 1982, Joe Strummer, the lead vocalist of The Clash, ran the Paris Marathon apparently drunk and with little prior training. He finished in around 4 hours, which is a decent time for a weekend warrior. Now there's more to this story which I'll get to later. And while I don't recommend running 26.2 miles with no training, recently there's been a lot of research on what, if any, benefits there are to being a warrior who works out only on the weekends. For example, a large study gathered the health and exercise habits of nearly 90,000 people for over an average of 6 years, and found that the warriors who squeezed an equivalent of the weekly recommendations of 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise into the weekends had the same lower risk for over 200 diseases, particularly high blood pressure and diabetes, as the people who spread out the exercise recommendations over the entire week. Previous studies have found that compared to people who exercise most days of the week, weekend warriors benefit similarly in the reduction of unhealthy visceral fat, cardiovascular disease, and the metabolic syndrome. Research also shows that weekend warriors see the same mental health benefits, including less depression and a lower incidence of neurodegenerative diseases, like Parkinsonism and dementia. And perhaps best of all, the research shows that weekend warriors have the same lower mortality risk as more regular exercisers. Now, while most of these studies gathered the data over many years, the actual activity levels were only measured for a few representative weeks, and most of the studies were done in older people. However, we do have the example of 29-year-old Joe Strummer, who felt being on stage was like exercise, and therefore he could run a marathon without any training. But after he crossed the finish lines, his friends asked him if he wanted some water or orange juice, to which he replied, "I want a cigarette and a beer." Okay, Joe wasn't the best example of a weekend warrior, but there are some concerns for any weekend warrior. One study laid out why they would be more prone to shoulder and elbow injuries compared to better trained athletes in sports like tennis, golf, volleyball, and softball. Plus, for sports like these, there's always downtime between sets, etc., which doesn't count towards your total exercise time. Another drawback is the longer gaps between workouts would likely prevent significant and continual improvements in strength or cardiovascular endurance. This is because muscle, heart, and other tissues have too much time between workouts for the adaptations and improvements to build upon those from the previous workout. For example, at the end of a hard weekend of exercising, your worn down muscles are left weaker than before you exercised. Over the next 48 to 72 hours, muscle repair begins. So say by Wednesday, the muscles are a little bit stronger than they were before. However, if you don't exercise those muscles again until the following Saturday, you lose the gains and your muscles are back to where they were the week before. So while condensing the recommended 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise into the weekend will maintain your fitness level, it will be difficult to achieve any significant gains. Plus, compressing your workouts into the weekend means you may miss an entire week's worth of exercise when you have to go to your weird cousin Wally's wedding weekend in Walla Walla. So because of the greater injury risk, the limited adaptations, and the greater risk of weekend distractions preventing you from exercising, I wouldn't recommend weekend-only workouts. But compared to doing nothing, there are at least 200 benefits to working out only on the weekend. Or as Joe Strummer called it, rocking the Casbah. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? I'm rocking the basketball Casbah. As always, my answers come from peer-reviewed research.